Hi guys, Random Reviews here, and today I am reviewing A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is actually the first story that he wrote that involved Sherlock Holmes. So it wasn't too long, it was actually only 85 pages, and I've got my bookmark in there for when I continue on in the rest of them. So this one was where you got introduced to your main characters, Dr. Watson, Sherlock Holmes, and the detectives Lestrade and Gregson. I really enjoyed the first-person perspective of Dr. Watson because even though he's not the main character, Sherlock Holmes is, if you'd have had the first-person perspective of Sherlock Holmes, I don't think the story would have lasted more than maybe 2 chapters. So I really did enjoy the fact that it was from Dr. Watson's perspective, as Sherlock Holmes is supposed to be of higher intellect than the average person, and you would consider yourself on the same level as Dr. Watson's thinking, so it was good that he'd written it from his perspective. Now, I'm not going to go into detail with the storyline because I don't want to give too much away, but there is murder, there is mystery, and it does get solved. Now, the story is written in 2 different parts, and I must say the reading was very fast. I didn't find that it was boring at all. There was probably about a chapter and a half of part 2, the beginning of part 2, where I found the story did slow down a bit. I didn't really understand why he'd included this random information in my mind at that point. I didn't understand where it was coming from, why it was in here. Was there maybe a mix-up with the story? And then when I finally recognized a name, I started to understand that this was what took place to lead up to why this person was committing these murders. The entire story does seem very short. It's only 83 pages, but considering the fact that it was published in a penny paper, as I was told, I'm not too sure if it was a penny paper, but that's what I got told. Because it was originally published in a penny paper, that was considered a very long story in that time frame. And not only that, but considering the time that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote this story, it was very ingenious writing. I was very intrigued with the writing style that he had. I liked that the last chapter, the conclusion, was actually kind of the epilogue to the story. You actually learned more about Sherlock Holmes in that one chapter than you did throughout the entire book. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed to see how he'd taken different clues and how he'd connected them together. And I really did enjoy that. It was a very rational thinking, and it actually made a lot of sense from reading the story and the mystery and finding all the little tidbits and clues that you were given to seeing Sherlock's complete explanation of the mystery. Because usually you don't get an explanation from the person solving the mystery as to how he figured out who the person was. So that's one piece of information that a lot of times you don't get in mystery novels nowadays. Another thing I really enjoyed was the fact that A Study in Scarlet, the title of the novel, was actually Sherlock Holmes, how he titled the mystery. And I believe it's in the conclusion chapter that Sherlock Holmes explains what A Study in Scarlet, what that title means, why he named it that way. And I think it works very well for the story. It's just the title and all of the events that took place connected so well together. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is such an amazing writer. I never actually realized until probably when I finished the novel that I'd actually sympathized with the murderer. And I'm not sure if you've read the novel, if you sympathized with the murderer over whoever was murdered. That was probably the first time I found where I actually sympathized with a murderer character that had been written. Usually you sympathize with the person who had been murdered. But what's interesting is, because of that little bit of information where I was confused at first, with that information being given and then they continue on where the first part of the story left off, I found it very interesting that he included that information then, because you get to see what took place to lead up to why this person did these murders. And it made a lot of sense, and I actually sympathized with the murderer. And it's probably a bad thing to say. You've always been taught you never sympathize with the person who's done the murder. But I couldn't help it. With the way that his character was written and with the events that took place early on before he murdered these people, I was quite shocked to actually see that I had sympathized with him. If you guys find that you had a different reasoning with it, if you guys didn't sympathize with the murderer and you found that you actually sympathized with something else, or there's something else that I haven't brought up with this story that you would like to bring up, please leave a comment down below. I'm really interested to hear what other people thought of this. I have read Sherlock Holmes before. I actually read one of the short stories in grade 9 and another one in grade 10, and I can't really remember them too well, but I'm glad that I finally picked this up and read the first one. You do get your introduction to the characters. You get to see a lot of the interaction with how Watson and Holmes met before they lived at 221B Baker Street. And I really enjoyed it. I think, considering the fact that I did watch the BBC Sherlock episode, A Study in Pink, I'm not too excited that they changed the title. And now that I've read the story, I'm kind of not too happy that they did change the storyline a bit. But I do like the renditionings that I have seen for TV shows or movies. But seriously, books, I really do like reading how the author originally saw these characters, and I'm excited to read more of them. So I hope you guys like this review, and go and pick up a random book and read. Bye guys.